one universal Father has given being to us all. He has without partiality afforded all the same sensations and endued us all with the same faculties. And however variable we may be in society or religion, however diversified in situation or color, we are all the same family and stand in the same relation to Him.
In Oella, Maryland, Baltimore County, Benjamin Banneker's extraordinary life was memorialized in 1977 by this granite obelisk at the Mount Gilboa Chapel. The exact site of his grave is unknown. Banneker was born in this area on November 9, 1731, and lived all of his 75 years here. He owned a 100-acre tobacco farm. The farm was bought by his parents in 1737 when he was 6 years old. They put his name on the deed. This ensured that he would be designated as free by the colony of Maryland. What little formal education he obtained came from his family and attendance at a Quaker school when he was very young. Even as a child, he had a sharp memory and a keen interest in mathematics and mechanics. In 1753, when he was just 22 years old, he borrowed a pocket watch that he used as a model to build a wooden striking clock. The clock that Banneker built, similar to the one shown here, became the root of the celebrity that he obtained in his early life. In colonial America, a clock was a rarity. Building one in the manner that Banneker had was truly a feat of genius. Banneker was always a keen observer of nature. At the advanced age of 58, he took up astronomy and taught himself well enough to make the mathematical calculations for an ephemeris from which an almanac was produced. It was published for 6 years and widely distributed. It gave his talents fame throughout America and abroad. Early in 1791, he was appointed as a technical assistant to the team that would survey and lay out the federal territory that would eventually become the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. His resistance to the oppression all around him was profoundly exemplified when he sent a copy of his 1792 almanac to Secretary of State, slaveholder, and author of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson. This was in response to Jefferson's disparaging views on the intellectual capabilities of Africans. Banneker died October 9, 1806, and his obituary was published in a local newspaper, the Federal Gazette, on October 28th. It reads, "On Sunday the 9th, instantly departed this life at his residence in Baltimore County, Mr. Benjamin Banneker, a black man, an immediate descendant of an African father. He was well known in this neighborhood for his quiet and peaceful demeanor, and among scientific men as an astronomer and mathematician. In his early life, he was instructed in the most common rules of arithmetic, and thereafter, with the assistance of different authors, he was enabled to acquire perfect knowledge of all the higher branches of learning. Mr. Banneker was the calculator of several almanacs, which were published in this as well as some of the neighboring states. And although of late years none of his almanacs were published, he never failed to calculate one every year and left them among his papers. He preferred solitude to mixing with society, and devoted the greater part of his time in reading and contemplation, and to no books was he more attached than the Scriptures. At his decease, he bequeathed all of his astronomical and philosophical books and papers to a friend. Mr. Banneker is a prominent instance to prove that a descendant of Africa is susceptible of as great improvement and deep knowledge into the mysteries of nature as that of any other nation." To the right and below Banneker's obituary in the Federal Gazette is an offer of a $100 reward for a runaway slave also named Ben, and who was also a violinist like Banneker. On the facing page are similar offers for 2 other black men. There is also an advertisement for the sale of a young girl trained to do housework. Banneker was surrounded by slavery. The neighboring farms of Randall, Teal, Owens, and Floyd all had at least one black held enslaved. Slavery controlled the nature of relationships between all people in colonial Maryland. It was no doubt a contributing factor in Banneker's preference for solitude. Benjamin Banneker's grandfather was named Banneker. Banneker was a survivor of the Middle Passage, the journey into slavery from the west coast of Africa to the Americas. Banneker was of royal blood and was probably of Wolof extraction, the son of an African chief. Evidence points to the Senegambia region of West Africa, present-day Senegal, as his place of origin. In 1692, Banneker was sold to Molly Welsh, a former milkmaid from Wessex County, England, who had arrived in the Patapsco River Valley as an indentured servant. She worked off her 7-year debt in 1690 and began working a farm. Eventually, she freed Banneker. Surprisingly, in 1696, she married him and took his name. Dr. Ron English of Ohio State University has researched the origins of the Banneker name. While working in Senegal, West Africa, he found the Banneker bar.
But Banneker turned out not to be a name. It's actually a compound word in Wolof, and it means sweet place, Banneker. One of the locals interpreted it for me as the Utopia bar, right, the sweet place bar. So I started doing linguistic research, and it turns out that Ban is a very common prefix in Senegal, not only for the Wolof, but for other ethnic groups as well. And it always means sweet. For example, in the Jola society in Senegal, there's Banouk, which is the sweet palm wine. In the Wolof society, a woman with a sweet disposition will be called Bane. That's a common woman's name. Now, when the Saint Louis region took on an Arabic name called Tanakas, which means belongs to the place in Arabic, they then fused it with the Ban sound, maybe because it had this nice sound to it, something sweet was associated with Ban. So Tanakas became Banakas, and that's where the Banneker name came from.
Banneker and Molly had 4 children. Mary, the eldest, retained the name which evolved into Banneker when she married Benjamin's father, who was also a survivor of the Middle Passage. He took on the Christian name Robert after working his way to free black status. He took on the name Banneker when he married Mary. Benjamin, their only boy, never married and had no children, so all present-day descendants of Benjamin Banneker are lateral descendants. Banneker's life is chronicled in a biography by Silvio Bedini that was first published in 1972. Banneker's technical prowess, the clock that he built without instruction, his almanacs, the inspired letter that he wrote to Jefferson, and his work on the survey of the federal territory were researched in detail. One of the assignments during the survey was the calibration of the all-important regulator clock.
Banneker's role was a very, very important one. There were very few people in the whole country who could have done it. Very few. Just as there were very few who could calculate ephemerides for almanacs. It required quite an amount of knowledge and skill. This clock had to be very carefully maintained. This was Banneker's job. And also he had to, and also regulate it for fast and slow. The way he did this is by making observations with the large zenith sector, which is a tube 6 feet long that poked out of a hole at the top of the observatory tent. And Banneker would have to lie on his back on that ground and observe through this eyepiece and watch for the transit of certain stars and record the moment of that transit.
Following the initial publication of Silvio Bedini's biography, a group called the Friends of Benjamin Banneker was formed to preserve Banneker's legacy. It was John McGrain who successfully completed the search for the Banneker farm.
We're at the site of Benjamin Banneker's cabin on the tract of land called Stout that the Banneker family owned starting in 1737. And finding this cabin was a result of 3 years of archaeology work. And the first effort was to dig shovel test pits every 10 feet all over this entire property, which I had prior determined was very likely or certainly the site of the Banneker farm, judging from the boundary stones that can be found even today. Was actually found, and it was reported in various newspapers and reports, and they found the hearth and estimated just where the site was, and it was exhibited to visitors for a couple of seasons, and then the site was carefully covered up and planted over again because there's always a possibility of doing more work.
The historical side of the Banneker movement is complemented by the work of educators. Teachers bring Banneker's life into their classrooms to inspire and motivate their students, who continue to be fascinated by his extraordinary perseverance.
And then I'm going to give you a little more information.
The Benjamin Banneker Association is a national organization comprised of over 1,000 mathematics teachers. Their work includes an annual breakfast and publications. For teachers, Banneker is the quintessential role model.
And when you look at Banneker, he was way outside of the box when it comes to what is expected of people back in his day. And they have to be aware that there are a lot of children who are capable of doing things that people don't think that they should be able to do. And Banneker was one such person. So this wonderful black man is a model for all of the creativity that our students have that hasn't been tapped. And if he didn't have...
Banneker was the son of an African slave who had survived the Middle Passage. He himself was free, and his mother was free. His grandmother and grandfather all were free. So in a sense, he had the personal experience of understanding what the physical and mental aspects of slavery were, but he was also sheltered in the sense that he was living isolated back in the woods of Maryland, and he was not bombarded like so many of our children are with the negative images that come from the media.
Bill Lambert is chairperson of the board of the Friends of the Benjamin Banneker Historical Park and Museum. The work of the Friends includes the conceptualization, construction, and oversight of the facility built on the Banneker home site. The Friends are dedicated to the development and dissemination of the Banneker story.
So the potentials are unlimited here. In addition to that, I think this is a great opportunity for government as well as private citizens to form a common bond in terms of ensuring that the history of a people will be preserved for future generations. And I think that's the important, one of the important facts about this particular building and this holy ground that we're sitting on right now, or we're occupying, if you will.
The Banneker name traveled throughout colonial America and reached as far away as Europe. It has endured the test of time and is etched in stone above many schools and institutions. Numerous programs whose primary goal is to serve operate under the name Banneker. Why has the Banneker name been used as a banner by so many? Those who know the Banneker story know that Banneker means self-reliance. Banneker means seen beyond the limitations and boundaries imposed upon you by others. Banneker means living your life through a reality that you define. Banneker means academic perseverance. Banneker means resistance through excellence. Banneker means love for mathematics and science. The Banneker name means love for the truest and purest meaning of American ideals.